Oh, no, I don't. Okay. All right. I guess my microphone's on. Hi. It's really nice to be here. This is a really great conference. So thank you to the organizers, Logan Foundation, Gavin, Sarah, everybody for having us here. It's been really, really incredible experience. I'm here with my colleague Bruce Lytle, who's back there somewhere. Jake saw him, but I don't know where he is. So. I'll be talking about something we call adversary-resistant computing. We are a group of 4 security technologists based in Montreal, in Canada. Our background is doing offensive security, so we're kind of old school hackers. We do penetration testing and things like that. So we come from the security side, the technology side. However, we have done privacy work in the past. It's an area of interest. So we're philosophically, ideologically aligned with the pro-privacy, free speech movement, politically as well as the technology side. We've written a Tor client in pure Java called Orchid, and we've done some anti-censorship work, particularly around Iran following the 2009 election and things like that. So this has been an area of interest for us for a long time. We're working now on usable privacy and security tools. Sander mentioned like web vulnerabilities, like cross-site scripting and SQL injection. So we have a tool that's actually pretty popular. All the software we write is free and open source. We have a tool called Vega that actually looks programmatically for those. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's used by lots of people. So we wrote that in the past. Now we're working on a couple of projects. Subgraph OS is something that was mentioned here. It's an operating system that is built to be resistant to network-borne adversaries who are attacking at the software level. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, the problems rather than what we're working on, but I'll touch on that. We're also writing a new mail client called Subgraph Mail, which is designed to make secure communications by email more usable. And part of that is another project called NIMS. You can read about it on nims.io is our website. And NIMS is a protocol, it's a scheme for discovering and attesting identities and keys. It addresses the problem of distributing public keys for email correspondence, PGP keys. This is one of the things that's really most challenging about secure communication by email with PGP. This is just quickly an illustration of Subgraph OS. Conceptually, we call it the layer representation, and each of those mean-looking robots is kind of one of the threat sources in our threat model. The top one is the global passive adversary. The middle one is the active network adversary. Or sorry, the top one is the host adversary, and then active network adversary, and the bottom is a global passive adversary representing the giant sniffer, vacuuming up all of the traffic on the internet. And I'm going to talk about how, what the problems are for each of these kind of layers and how technology can be used to address them, to achieve a better posture against active network adversaries. So as I defined earlier, adversary-resistant computing is really, I want to explain that we mean resistance to network-borne targeted attacks. We can't do much about burglary. We can't do much about physical security because we don't make hardware, and we're not in everybody's homes, thankfully, to prevent burglaries. We are software security people, so we are trying to address the threats to software by network-borne adversaries who conduct targeted attacks. That quote that Jake cited earlier is one we really like. Jake said something like, trying to turn Eve into Mallory and forcing Mallory to become a burglar, I think is what he said. And our job is to make Mallory into the burglar by making the Mallory-style attacks much more difficult. In kind of crypto terminology, Eve is the passive adversary, Mallory is the active adversary, and a burglar is someone who needs to actually physically break into into your house to steal your secrets. So what are targeted attacks? A targeted attack is a network-borne attack that consists of a few elements. It starts with identification and location of the target. So your adversary is out there on the internet. They need to find you in order to attack you. They can do this a couple of ways. They can apply social engineering, which is kind of con artist techniques to extract information about where you may be located. They can use open source intelligence. A typical scenario involves an adversary who wants to attack an organization looking for employees of that organization out on the internet. So they could rely on social networks. It's easier than it's ever been. They can use networks like LinkedIn. They can use Twitter to find individuals to attack an organization. So this is the identification and location part of the targeted attack. The exploitation almost always occurs through leveraging software vulnerabilities. Many of you are probably accustomed to receiving regular patch instructions through automatic notifications in your operating system. These are almost always security updates, and they're almost always patches to vulnerabilities that are the result of programming errors, and that these errors can be exploited by hackers to break into your computer. And that's why your vendor, maybe it's Apple, maybe it's Microsoft, are asking you to install this patch and reboot your computer because vulnerabilities are very common and they're regularly found by an active community of researchers that used to be really open. So as I said, my background is software security. I used to run a big forum called BugTrack, and maybe some of you heard of. I ran it at its peak before it sort of became less relevant in social media era with like 50,000 people. Anyways, this forum was just a place to openly discuss vulnerabilities. It was even controversial. Some people thought it was too much information. It's sort of a microcosm of kind of the WikiLeaks Snowden debate that too much information is bad and it should be kept secret and stuff like that. This debate happened too with software vulnerabilities and exploits. There used to be a really active community of researchers who would openly post information about vulnerabilities they found in software and how to fix them, or if they were being compromised, they would talk about that and explain how they thought they were being compromised, and people would kind of confirm it and stuff like that. That doesn't happen anymore because most of those researchers are selling their vulnerabilities now. Because vulnerabilities and exploits are used to break into computers, the people doing that research have found that there are buyers for this stuff, and they are not disclosing it publicly anymore, and that's one reason why BugTrack is not a popular forum anymore, because there is just less information about vulnerabilities out there, because there were something. Once the vulnerability is exploited, that exploitation is used as a mechanism to implant something called a RAT. This is an acronym. I really like it. It's a nice image for the concept. RAT stands for Remote Access Tool, also known as rootkit, backdoor, Trojan horse, although Trojan horse was originally meant to be a piece of malware that was like in the story of the Trojan horse, designed to be something friendly, but actually it's not. Delivery of a RAT is usually... I have 3 more minutes. I'm on the second slide. Okay. All right. I'm gonna try to go a bit faster. Okay. Okay. So when a targeted attack occurs, what usually happens is that the adversary gets the email address and they send an email. I saw a quote go by on Twitter. It always begins with an email. It's not always an email, but it mostly is. Sometimes the adversary will hack a website that they know the target visits. This is called a watering hole attack. You think of a watering hole where people gather or animals gather. The email will have, if it's an email, it will usually have some social engineering element to make it look more plausible to the victim. So if the victim is part of an organization and they're in the accounting department, they may get like a budget document email that pretends to be like a payroll spreadsheet or a budget spreadsheet or something like that. Something that would entice the user to actually open it. Once the user opens it, the exploitation occurs. It's most often an exploit. but it doesn't need to be. Sometimes it's just the executable, although the modern operating systems are pretty good at preventing the user from inadvertently running something that would be dangerous, but that still happens. So once the remote access tool is installed, the adversary can then exfiltrate data. They can rely on the remote access tool to perform long-term surveillance for the purpose of tracking, monitoring the target's activities, their location, their movement. These remote access tools are meant to live there for a long time and provide persistent long-term remote access to the adversary at their will. When the remote access tool, when the targeted attack is targeting an organization, the remote access tool will serve as a beachhead into the organization through which the adversary can extract credentials, SSH keys, encryption keys, passwords for other systems that the target has access to laterally move and extend their breach through the organization. They call this is also known as pivoting in penetration speak lingo. Some rats have been in the news. This is a headline from Ars Technica, which is obscured by this little video box here. Year of the Rat, describing alleged Chinese malware. This is my time check.
What are we going to do? How many slides do you have?
Not that many more. I'll go through these super quickly.
No,
so
like 3 minutes, really?
Sure. Yeah, 3 minutes.
Other people are waiting. Trying to protect you guys.
Yeah. Ethiopian journalists here. I mean, journalists are an important user, potentially at risk to targeted attacks, and we see this in the news. Another one, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange has been talking a lot about malware and weaponized malware for good reason. And I believe in his recent spy files there's some information about weaponized malware being used specifically to target journalists. The EFF talks about malware targeting journalists, specifically a case involving Vietnamese bloggers who were targeted by what is alleged to be malware of state-sponsored origin, and more. So I'm running out of time. So who has the capability to launch these attacks? It's mostly nation states, because nation states have the vast resources to stockpile exploits and acquire them. They're expensive to develop custom malware. However, it need not be nation states. There are companies out there, really sketchy companies, that are selling customized malware, selling exploits. It's a gray market, and it's very easy for an adversary to hide who they are. So if you're somebody facing an adversary, if you're a journalist, if you're an activist, you're up against any potential adversary with the resources to go out and buy this malware, it's not out of the question that they will do this. It's a high risk for the potential targets, including journalists, which puts their sources at risk. Some of these companies selling this stuff have said that only good governments, such as NATO governments and NATO partners, only. But when the EFF investigated what it means to be a NATO partner, they found that this included freedom-loving countries like Belarus and Azerbaijan. So who knows who's actually buying it? What are the countermeasures? You can try to not open email, but that's not very practical advice. But honestly, that's good advice. You have to be really careful about opening attachments in particular. Keeping vulnerabilities patched, that doesn't prevent exploitation of zero-day vulnerabilities, which happens in high-value targets, high-value targeted attacks. Antivirus actually scares me because vulnerabilities are being discovered in the antivirus systems themselves, and these are running at the lowest system level, hooked into all the basic I/O functions. And anyways, they use signature-based detection, which is not effective against custom malware for which they do not have signatures because of the low infection footprint. We need to do better than this as security technologists. This is a very sad slide, actually.
Do you have a solution?
Yes.
Give it us now.
Kind of, yes.
Finally, we get a solution.
What we need to do is we can't eliminate these attacks, but we can make them more expensive. in terms of effort, in terms of money, which makes them more, we need to make them more expensive to deploy. And here are a couple of steps. These are not all. These are a few of them. We as security technologists, these are the ones that we can help with. We need to make it harder for the target to be identified and located. Tor helps with that. We need to make it more expensive and less reliably, we need to make it less easy to exploit vulnerabilities reliably. There are techniques to do this for many classes of vulnerabilities. If any of you are familiar with GR security or PAX, it's a set of Linux kernel patches that increase the kind of randomness and the constraints of certain processes in an operating system, Linux only, unfortunately. Although a comparable thing exists for Microsoft, I don't recommend closed source solutions. So I only deal with open source and free software. We need to make systems hardened. We need to do things like reproducible builds. And you can just read the slide because I need to move forward. The important point is that effective countermeasures exist, and it's up to us as security technologists to tie them all together into something. This is just more detail on the technical detail of these countermeasures, which I don't have time to read it. One I would like to mention also is that certain key applications probably need to be replaced altogether for reasons beyond their insecurity, their general insecurity as software due to their being written in C or C++. For example, email client. Doing secure email is really difficult. So that's why we at Subgraph are writing something called Subgraph Mail. So that's it. We are here. We are really happy to be here. We think that this conference is a really brilliant idea to bring together technologists and journalists and people in between to serve as a bridge. We want to hear from you. We want to talk to you about kind of pain points, frustrations with existing tools, and what your needs are. So feel free to find us or contact us by email or Twitter or whatever. My PGP key is on my fingerprint is on my Twitter, so you can go and get it there if you want to communicate securely. So thank you.
Thank you. David, will you please take some questions?
Oh.
Please take some questions.
Okay, yes.
Sure. Can we have some questions for David? Who would like to ask a question? Yeah.
I want to, I sometimes put this out as a joke, but I want to put forward an idea which I think is in line with what you're saying, but kind of radically in the extreme. I guess I'll call it extreme transparency. Right now, one of the problems for journalists of course, is that there's a lot of data being collected, and it's a massive amount and hard to sort through, but if you're trying to target someone, it seems possible. What if we were to sell the public on the idea, the woman from ex-MI5 person made it a point that we could potentially even track someone walking around. Why not say to the government, should track everything and make it available all the time? You sell the public on, I lost my Kindle the other day, and it took hours to find it. It would be great if the system could have told me where it was. My child is lost. I'm supposed to meet my partner here a couple hours ago. She's missing. Sell it on that basis. That forces at least the argument to the public about what's going on, and the reality of the situation is no one can manage that much data, period. So it's another way of increasing the expense and kind of putting the enemy on the defensive. I know it sounds absurd, it probably is, but what they're doing is absurd. It's an idea.
I think we need to consider thought experiments like that, although we need to be very careful because once we go down that path, there's no turning back. And as you talked about knowing where everything is and everyone is, I immediately thought of our past in World War II when bad people wanted to track certain groups of people. And that is something that really scares me, and that's why I do what I do. So I think that conceptually it's an interesting thought experiment, and we can draw useful ideas from this for practice, but that's definitely not the world I want, I think, personally.
Second question.
Yes.
Oh, you said there were vulnerabilities in email because of the languages used. What languages would you recommend for secure coding?
That's a great question. I didn't have time to talk about that. So, languages such as C and C++ are very low level, and they allow you as a programmer to shoot yourself in the foot very easily. You can do something like, for example, when dealing with memory, it's very easy to make a mistake that allows for an adversary to inject their own code into the process and run whatever they want. This is how many exploits work. And this is just one group of problems that can happen in software due to bugs. When you use a programming language that runs in a managed runtime, Java Virtual Machine, now Java has a bad reputation, so any application runtime or virtual machine runtime for a computer language where memory is managed, bounds are, buffer overruns are not, critical failures, critical security failures. Those are better environments for applications of greater complexity, especially applications that are security sensitive, such as mail clients, which take in data, complex data formats from untrustworthy sources such as the internet, hostile sources such as the internet, and can fail safely. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes.
Hi, you're right. I work as a data journalist, and because of that, part of my work has kind of leached into using security tools at the organisation I work at. And I was wondering if you could just explain to me a little bit about the functionality of Subgraph, how you expect journalists to use it, and also the timeline when the kind of beta testing is beginning and when you expect it to be launched as a full product.
Yeah, so so we are trying to make Subgraph OS and Subgraph Mail as usable as possible. So it shouldn't really be that much of a different experience than, if I were to shoot low for expectations, the lowest expectation we have is kind of Ubuntu level usability. Although we would love to have something that's as user-friendly as Mac OS X. That's the dream. The reality is that we're a small team of people right now. We have a lot of experience building software, reasonably complex software, but we are slowed down a bit because of the way we fund ourselves. We do security consulting for various corporations, and that this takes up a lot of our time. But hopefully we'll be able to speed that up in the future. As for timeline, sometime next year for all of the things I talked about.
Here's a last question,
yes.
I think.
Hi, Mark Cavell from Indie Media UK. My question to you is, which country would you set up, encrypted secure servers? Would it be Iceland, or are there other countries you would consider?
So that's a question I'm asking myself these days, because one of the things we're setting up is a secure email service, and we're looking for an ideal place to host that. I've heard good things about Iceland, of course, and I've heard good things about Germany, which has strong privacy laws, and I've heard good things about the Netherlands. So, yeah. So, all of these are contentious, and we're still testing the limits in each of these regions. But Iceland has hosted WikiLeaks data. Iceland has hosted although some of the hidden services were there. So, it remains to be seen really what the limits are. It really depends on what you're hosting. But Iceland, Germany, Netherlands, I've heard good things about. So I think that was the last question.
Is there any other question? We have space for one more question. Yes? There you are. It's space, but time. It should be.
Have you considered crowdsourcing Kickstarter campaign, not because you want the money and the time, but because it will create awareness?
No problem. That wasn't a question, but
didn't hear you.
Okay, so have we considered crowdsourcing? Yeah, we have.
Not for the money, for the visibility. Not for the money that it would freeze your time, but for the user visibility and for the awareness that it will create. Because that would be a campaign that will shoot in Kickstarter and will be picked by the press and it will create more awareness.
Yeah, it's something, of course, we've considered. We've seen some very successful projects bootstrap themselves very quickly and get a lot of attention. Maybe it's something we'll do. You know, I guess we just want to make sure we do it at the right time if we choose to go down that path. You know, it's a sort of, we'll see.
But Subgraph is open source, or not?
Yeah, everything we do is open
Yeah,
source.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, David.
Yeah, thanks.
So we're about to now make a connection to Julian Assange. And then Laura Flanders takes over from here.
Inshallah.
I will already say while we wait, while I get another minute. After the talk with Julian, there will be drinks outside for you. And in the garden room where we had lunch this afternoon, at 7 o'clock there starts a big data poetry performance. It's sound and visuals. It's a beautiful composition that had great reviews. So I hope you will enjoy that at 7. With your